Welcome back, you guys, to another episode of In the Kitchen with KatieCakes. I am your girl, KatieCakes, and today we get to talk about a quick test that you can do to check to make sure your glutes, your cakes are activating properly and evenly. And then what you'll need to do to even them out so that you can get the most out of your cake baking work in the kitchen. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're going to work on squeezing our glutes separately and without activating our quads. So what happens a lot of the times when we want to engage the glutes is we end up over-firing from the front of our leg, our quads. Our society is quad dominant. A lot of the work we do, like sitting at a desk all day, tightens and shortens our hip flexors, which turns on and fires our quads a lot when we go to work out. On top of that, cycling is a huge phenomenon these days, which is great, but it's also only leading into that same thing of overactivating the quads. And when you do that, you guys, it's like you can't get the work out of the cakes like you want to. So maybe instead of getting 100% of the work, you're getting like 60% of the work. And that equals out to getting 60% of your cake. And we all want a full cake, right? So what we're gonna do to test this activation is actually just lay down on the floor. You're gonna get your cakes like nice up and beneath you. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna place your hands on top of your quads, the top of the legs, right? And from here, you're going to try to squeeze one side of your glutes, like one cheek, right? And make sure that the top of the leg, the quad, does not squeeze, right? And you'll notice that it squeezes by if your hand like lifts or if you feel that squeeze. So right here, I'm going to activate this left glute of mine, okay? So my hand is on my thigh. We'll just focus here. And I'm gonna squeeze. So you see how I squeeze my glute up off the floor? Good, I'm gonna take it slower. So I'm gonna squeeze and try to lift in and up off that floor and let go. And I'm squeezing and good. Now I've gotten my glutes to a point where I'm pretty strong with activating here without activating my quads at all. So you didn't see my hand like lift up because this squeeze. I'm almost to the point where it's harder for me to activate this. Like these are far less dominant than this for me. That's opposite for a lot of people. Like I can mindlessly kind of squeeze my glutes, whereas this I have to focus on to squeeze the quad, where that's the opposite for a lot of people. So try this out for yourself right now. I'm gonna do the other side here. Let's see if my hip comes up as I squeeze. So I'm gonna take a breath in, I'm gonna squeeze the glute, and I'm gonna lift. But that lift happens because my glute squeezed over here, right? And kind of lifted my hip up, but nothing is activated here. Break it down, squeeze it up, and I can feel, because my hand is here, that nothing is activating here. And squeeze it up. Good. So I'm pretty evenly activated here, and I can do that without firing the quads. I'm gonna try to show you what it might look like if you're quad dominant and this starts to squeeze first before this. So say you go to squeeze your glutes and your quad fires first and then your glute. So let's do that again. So I'm gonna go quad, you see that? And then glute. So a lot of the times this is what happens with people. They intend to squeeze here, but because this is dominant, this squeezes first and then this squeezes. So, for instance, if you find out that one side squeezes better than the other side, like you're able to activate and kind of mentally focus on this here without firing this on one side, but then the other side you have a hard time with, that's your indication that you're going to need to stretch that side. So let's say that my right cheek does not activate fire as much as my left cheek. And in turn, this quad over here fires first. So that's an imbalance, right? Or let's say you're somebody who you only feel these fire first and then barely you can get that butt squeezing after. That's indication that you're quad dominant and we need to get to small, like little intricate ways to help you retrain those glutes to fire so that when you get into class, the cakes class, anytime you're working the booty with the booty band, that you're actually getting the work that you want to out of that. So first things first, let's focus on this right leg for me, because for me, right, quote unquote, this is gonna be less activated than this one because this is too tight. So I'm gonna come up and I'm first going to work on stretching that hip flexor out, because if this is tight, it gives this no way to work, right? Like this can't squeeze to its full potential if this is tight. Because if this is tight, I'm stuck here and I can't get a good squeeze back there. Now if this is nice and loose, I can really squeeze back here. So what we wanna do is work on stretching and releasing that hip. So by doing a pelvic tuck stretch where you reach up and through here, and this is stretching through here. You can also do that deep inner thigh quad stretch here, right? You can reach over and stretch it even further. You can do some mobility work where you're kind of going in and out and then opening up the other direction, in and out and back. That's gonna help mobilize the hips. You can also do work with a foam roller or lacrosse ball on that hip. I have plenty of tutorials here in the kitchen on the YouTube channel where you can find how to release that hip. Doing that work first and then doing some work to activate the glutes in a specific isolated way will help this one catch up. So what I'll do from there is then I'll lay over on my front, and I would just rest my head on my hands here, rest my shoulders here. And then what I would just focus on doing is kind of pointing through the toes, relaxing the rest of my body, but bracing my abs so I have a good foundation. And then I would just squeeze that glute and lift that leg in the air. And then I drop it and I brace the abs, squeeze nice and slow, lift that glute. Good. And then as you do this, you want to do it slow because you're trying to retrain the muscles to kind of hear where you're wanting it to squeeze, right? Like you're trying to tell your glutes to squeeze. So you need to go slow so that you can get into that. Yep. And you need to brace your core so that you don't just end up dumping into your low back, right? You're trying to isolate and squeeze the glutes, so everything else has to be nice and controlled and braced. You would just continue to do maybe 3 sets of 10 in between these other couple things that we'll do in a moment here. And the more and more you work on those small intricate muscles, the more and more those get activated. Another way to focus on that one glute and help it kind of fire and catch up to the other is allowing yourself to go into a one-leg bridge. So shoulders back, tuck those ribs. You'll keep one leg down, the one that you're trying to work. You take the other one up, and you're just gonna squeeze into this heel and squeeze up and down, and up and down. And again, try 3 sets of 10. Doing this isolated work is allowing yourself to really work into that one glute. And then from here, with a lighter band option, nothing too heavy, because you want to be able to squeeze into it, like a good deep squeeze. Get that band on, and you can lay back again, and we're just gonna isolate into that one side. So I prefer keeping the feet together for this because we can get a deeper squeeze over here. But again, close those ribs, pelvic tuck, pull those hips up, and we're just gonna squeeze here for 10, 9, 8, right? You will go all the way for 10 reps. Just this side, we're not even working on this side. This over here is just stabilizing and holding us in as we're focused right here on this side. And again, 3 sets of 10 that you can work in with the other 2. So once you've identified if you have an imbalance in which side of the cake squeeze more than the other, you can then do some work over time, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. You do that little set we just did for that one cheek to kind of help it catch up. And then you're getting the most out of that work in the kitchen, so you're not creating more imbalances. And then if you find that you're having a tough time just squeezing into those glutes without activating those quads first, do that, what we just did on both sides separately, right? But that allows you to kind of create that mind-booty connection so that those muscles, the cakes, will fire first and leave these quads out of it, because we're trying to get this developed back here, right? We don't want this to always take over. So do that work with the stretching and the releasing first, and then go into the activating. And then pretty soon you'll have nice, evenly, nice baked cakes. All right, you guys, thank you for joining me in the kitchen today, and I'll see you on the next one.